management research. Hello and welcome to the Management Research Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Hello and welcome to the next episode in our mini-series on motivation. Today we continue talking about the self-determination theory by Dizzy and Ryan, and in our last episode we talked about three types of motivation: the intrinsic, the extrinsic and the amotivation. In today's episode we are going to talk about the extrinsic motivation. And the interesting thing with extrinsic motivation is that actually most of the things that we do that are related to motivation, that are not related to amotivation, that are related to motivation like your work, your family-related activities and so on, they are extrinsic motivation factor. They come from outside because you need to do something, you need to perform your work, you need to do even the hobbies. They sometimes come from outside because once somebody inspired you, but it came not from inside, it came from outside, from somebody else. And Dizzy and Ryan said that within this extrinsic motivation, we have to look at different regulatory styles. It depends on how you position the activity that has to be done, that comes outside for an individual in order to involve this individual into the activity. They said that different types of regulatory styles, they are also related to different levels of performance. And the first one that they have 4 of them that they offer. And the first that they offer and the lowest level of outcomes would be the external regulation. I think you all know it from the older theory of motivations that if you want to motivate somebody, you have to offer to him or her reward if he or she achieves something, or punishment if he or she does not achieve something. So reward and punishment is the external regulation for the extrinsic motivation. There is a job to be done. If you do it correctly, if you do it well, you get a bonus. If you don't do the work well, you get penalized. For example, you lose some money or you lose something what is important to you. And this type of regulation is better than a motivation. For example, if you introduce this external stimuli, the reward and punishment, then people who did some job without the motivation, so the amotivation type, they will become motivated. It will be the external regulation. And I can give you an example that, for example, in our office, we have the door to the corridor, and usually it has to be closed because there are some noise and we don't want the noise to disturb it. And sometimes we do the following, that you leave the door open not because you want to leave it open, just because if you turn to the left, you open the door a bit more and then it stays in this position and it doesn't close itself. And this was something that we don't think about. At least if we talk about me, I don't think about it. I just open the door and I don't notice that it remained open. And once we had a conversation within our team and we said, okay, it couldn't work like this. And if somebody does something like this, we will penalize it in a simple way. For example, you get a conversation with somebody who is annoyed. And it is the same as introducing a kind of punishment. It is not a monetary punishment, but it's attentional punishment. It's, let's say, the anger that you get from other sides, from those people who get distracted because of the noise. So if you introduce something like this, of course, all of a sudden you start paying attention, or more often, or after you make a mistake and after somebody tells you that it was wrong, so you get penalized, you start paying attention to whether you left the door open or you closed the door. But the effectiveness, of course, will be the lowest one, because with the door, it's a very simple example. If we talk about an activity that can bring you money, then of course it gets people, you can motivate people in this way, but it is not the event, it is not the activity where they would like to invest additional time and walk an extra mile. And motivation is about willing to walk an extra mile. The next type of regulatory styles that they talk about, Dizzy and Ryan, was the introjected regulation. And I give the example with regard to the previous one. I'm going to go back to the external regulation. It is the same as we tell the students that if you perform well, if you make your assignment, you get some points. If you don't get them, you can fail the course and then you will have to do it again. This is the same reward and punishment idea. In the introjected regulation, it is still external. I give the assignment, but I can say that please do this task, do this assignment. If you do this task, if you make this assignment, you will help me. It is important for me. And as long as there is some respect from my students to my person, the chances that they will do this activity, they will perform this activity, they will make this assignment is higher than if I just tell them it is because of the points. If you make this assignment, you will get additional points. If you don't make them, you can fail the course. If you say it is important for me and if they respect me, then probably they will be willing to perform this task and really be willing to walk an extra mile. And the higher the level of this relatedness, the higher the level of respect with regard to my person, the higher the efforts will be that they will invest into this activity. It is called the introjected regulation because it comes from outside. I introject it onto you, but I also expect you to do it. And if there is this relationship that is important for the person, for the focal person, this person, he or she, will be performing the task much better than if it is only about the reward and punishment. The third type of regulatory styles is the identified regulation. And it is a bit different. Think about my students, and if I tell them, please do this task because it is important for you. So it is important not for me, it is important for you, because if you learn this task, you will be able to lead people better, you will be able to develop better strategies, you will be able to make people in your firm more satisfied and so on. All of a sudden, the relatedness is not with regard to myself, it is with regard to themselves, with regard to what is important for them. And this is the identified regulation because I say identify the effect of this work, identify the result of this work with themselves. So if you do it, you will get successful in the next steps. It will be better for you with regard to your career. And as you can imagine, the efforts that they invest into this activity will be even higher than if it is important for somebody else. Probably you notice that if you have to do something because of reward and punishment, you will invest not so much money as if your parents ask you to do it because it is important for them. And the efforts will be even higher if you understand that it's important for you than for your parents, for example, or than for your friends or something else. So doing something for the friends is the high level of efforts that you invest, but not as high as if it is something that we call the next level of regulatory styles is the integrated regulation. The problem with the previous one that we talked about, this identified regulation, that there are many things that are important to you, and there are many people who will tell you that something is important for you. Somebody will tell you that this class or that class is important for you, that this or that activity, this whatever you have, maybe sports that you perform and so on, is important to you. And you have so many things on your list that are important to you that you have to decide which of them is the most important. You have to internalize, you have to understand what is actually the most important to you. And if you want to build your career in the field of organizational behavior, then probably the motivation theories that we talk about is the most important thing to you, much more important than, for example, financial services, or much more important than investment, or more important than, strategic management. And if you see yourself as the strategist, then strategic management is the most important thing for you. And even though every professor will tell you that his or her class is the most important for you, you will have to specialize and you have to focus on something that you really internalize. And here comes the trick. This is the last level within this extrinsic motivation regulatory styles. That is the closest to the intrinsic motivation, because after you perceive it, after you identify yourself with this activity, after you integrate it into your value system, and after you decide that this is the most important thing for you, then all of a sudden you start acting as if it is the intrinsic motivation, the same as you do with hobbies, the same as you do when you are a child and playing somewhere. When you were a child and were playing somewhere, you did it just for fun. You did it because you wanted to try something out. You did whatever you did just because you wanted to see how the world will change after you perform this task. You were the explorer, you were the researcher, you were the first discoverer who tried to discover something, not because you were told to do so, just because you wanted. This is the intrinsic motivation. And this integrated regulation from the extrinsic motivation is very close, is the closest to the intrinsic motivation one. And here comes the trick. In our work, we very seldom have to do with the intrinsic motivation. Very often, or almost always, we have to do with the extrinsic motivation. And you as a manager or you as an employee have to decide what is important for you and how you want to deal with this task. And the closer it is to your intrinsic motivation, to this integrated regulation where you integrate the task into your value system, when you understand that it's really the most important thing to you, the higher will be the efforts that you will invest into this activity. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was interesting. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to achieve this integrated regulation and how to help you get motivated, or how to help you as a manager to make your employees motivated of doing something. Wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.